Well, we're indeed fortunate in having Anthony Cains join us for this conference. When an authority on early binding, like Bernard Middleton, tells you how impressed he is at the depth and breadth of Tony Cains' knowledge of early book structures, you know that you are in the presence of a giant. He is, metaphorically speaking. He is the technical director of the Conservation Laboratory at Trinity College Library in Dublin, and where he cares for one of the world's great resources of early books and Irish manuscripts. He is equally at home in the world of designer binding and will today demonstrate his techniques for creating spontaneous designs in leather during the book covering process. Help me welcome Anthony Cains.
That's a very nice reception. That's fine. I just want to show you a few slides to illustrate the way I've used this technique. I've brought a copy of the Victoria and Albert, the Designer Bookbinders exhibition at the Victoria and Albert Museum in the early 70s. And that shows you an example of Edgar Mansfield's use of manipulating the leather to emphasize, very cerebral sort of work. I'm not terribly cerebral about these things. And I just hatched onto that as a way of avoiding finishing. I mean, as a tradesman, I didn't like the finishers very much. Arrogant bunch. And they were always polishing the hell out of the leather. I'd gone to every trouble graining up and preserving the grain on the spine, banding up. And it goes to the finishing room, and it's hot irons, and so I didn't like them. And I wasn't very good at it anyway. So there we are. So we start, this is a sort of chronology. We start when I was working with Sandy Cockerell. And so the first slide illustrates the Reader's Bible. Is it? Yes. Cambridge University Press? I forget, I haven't looked at it for a long time. But we're at Cockerell's because we've got this French velvet lining to the boxes, which was very popular. But that was the first effort at inducing this grain. I don't know if you can see it. It's a cruciform shape with a card underlay. The book's sewn double and single flexible, and it's in native Nigerian goat skin. So that was my sort of an early tentative effort. This was the one that was exhibited at that Victoria and Albert exhibition DB, and this is the Pergamon Atlas, and I did this in Florence as recreation, from the grind of restoration work. And it has this very therapeutic thing. That went down rather well. It's quite a large volume, and the leather is extraordinarily thick, so there's some substance to the puckering. And then, of course, the Ptolemaic symbol for it's cut out of beech wood and smashed in while the leather's still very damp. And then that is about, I suppose that's 1970. So we're going from the mid-60s, 70s, and then, I beg your pardon? Puckering on the back, on the spine. Oh, it's all puckered. It's puckered all over. No space. Pardon? Yes, the wood smashed it. Yes, I rather like the idea of, like the 16th century type of centerpiece, where you just put it in the press and crush it in. That was the reference there, No, yes, just the board. I had a backing press. That's all I had in the flat. So I put the thing in place with just in a backing press and screwed it down. Yeah. It didn't matter how hard, or you can keep on pressing until you get right through the bookboard, if you like. And then this is Ron King's prologue, and this is early mid-70s, and a little more ambitious, but not the covering itself is just straightforward covering with like a rood screen effect with underlays of mounting board to produce these partitions, gridwork. And it's to give the idea of a medieval rood screen with little figures in the niches, angels and saints and so on. They are molded over pieces of card, and they're rather thin. It's not terribly spontaneous. But that's another way of dealing with it. There, the detail there. I think somebody said to me there was some gold tooling on it, the prologue, undoubled, really quite sharp. I think Howard Nixon said to me, "Oh, I didn't realize you could letter in gold." I thought, I'm very clever, I can letter in gold. But I enjoyed that. I've still got a copy. I did the edition binding for this. This is for the Monaghan Cathedral, and it's like a banner, it's carried in procession. So it's a bit loud. And they're little figures, the four gospel figures I've tried to indicate with this molded panel. Actually, this is covered in Italian goatskin with underlays of card, and then immediately it's covered, the gouges go in, while it's still damp. So it's rather like using a pair of band nippers. You don't try and go in with band nips after the leather's dry. So get your gouges out, and you can really get it well modelled. This is a rather flanky, soft leather, so it needed that. But there we are. And then this is Laura Borne-Erin, The Great Book of Ireland. This is quite a large volume, about 1990. It's elm boards, quartered elm boards from Torballylee, and it has it's parchment, and it has all contributions. It's all, the text is all made up from various people's efforts as calligraphy or illustration, poetry, music. So it's a celebration of Irish art and literature at that point in time. It's a time capsule. So this is, again, Italian goatskin, and what I'll do today is that sort of spiral motif, because you don't have to think about it much. It's pretty primeval, primitive. Suits me. And this is the box made again from Torballylee elm and Irish bog oak, and that was made by Eric Pearce with silver clasps. That was for the Great Book of Ireland. That's 1990. And then more recently, you saw the prologue, Ron King's. That's the wrong way around, but never mind. The prologue, this is the Chaucer, the Ellesmere Chaucer itself, which I had the privilege of repairing and binding, working with Maria Fredericks at the Huntington Library. That's smooth covering, open board covering, quartered oak, and the lacing pattern comes from evidence from the surviving paste down. So it's essentially a London binding of the early 15th century, middle of the 15th century. But instead of taured thongs, we've just made our own thongs following an American binder's instructions on cord making, cordage. Espinosa, yeah, we followed that. We did that at HRC, the summer school we had at HRC in '87, and I've used it a lot since. Chording, making up your own chords. You can tailor them exactly to the structure of the book. And then that's the end band. You've got a primary, and of course, and then this is the decorative secondary sewing in indigo and white over three crowning cores. That's based on a contemporary London binding that we saw in the collection, the Huntington collection. And there's a wonky signature there. This is a non-adhesive binding. It's you probably know all about these things. And then a reference to Roger Powell's contribution is my copy of one of his pressure boxes using recycled mahogany. So that's that portion. Is that all right so far? We know the context of this. Now, I'll say something about the forwarding. It's the text is Henningson's handbook, German text, profusely illustrated. It's impenetrable to me because it's in German, but the pictures are nice. I suppose that's but it's a nice text. This has been, top edge is gilt, I've got it the right way up, but gilt before sewing. It's been sewn on traditional 5-chord, pack sewn. After sewing, I think it was just rounded, while it was dry, it was rounded in the spine, pasted, and then formed a little, I think, some hammer work because the thread used wasn't quite thick enough. So some slight hammer work, but mainly bone folder and fingers to shape the backing, the angle back. And then lined with Japanese paper, and then the primary end band sewn on, and then the decorative silk end band, this caterpillar running across the end here. And then leather lined with calf skin, fleshings and sanded. Boards made up of blue jean board, two layers of, I don't know what I would call 8-penny or 10-penny board. I don't know quite what the gauge is. I'll tell you the gauge. I have a micrometer. I do use measurements. But I need my glasses to see them. I think the board at that, I can't reach that far. Anyway, they're thick. Yes, 2 layers of the same thickness of blue jean board. I had trouble getting this pulled a little, so I've used some Kalamazoo handmade to try and pull it. I'm still not happy with I like a slight inward curve to the board. I don't know what this is going to do, you see, and I can't press it after I've covered. It spoils the decoration. So I've got a slight curve there, but not quite as much as I would like. And it's lined with Permalife on the, it's wrapped in Permalife, but it was shaped with a spoke shave and then sanded, and the inside was planed with an 09.5 block plane. It's inside back cornered. There are 2 cuts to a back corner. There's the back corner that accommodates the wedge of the leather, so that you've got to continue, when the leather lays into that joint, it forms a continuous line. You haven't got it sticking out beyond the joint. So you back corner to what you gauge to be the wedge of leather that will turn in there, and then the back corner, another one here at 45 degrees, is for the cap setting, so that you have a nice shape. You want to be able to get your folder in there to nip into the the pivot section of the joint. You know, you want to get the leather, the two parts of the turn-in crushed together there, so you've got to have space for a folder in there. So that's 2 angles to a back corner. I might illustrate that. Looking in the section, you've got what you consider to be, if this was a square board, what you would do is cut a wedge off the end, which represented your turn-in. See, and that little wedge comes away. That's the first part of back cornering. And that means when you cover, you've got this nice straight joint. You haven't got the leather protecting beyond here, belling out here. So take away a wedge of board straight through the board. And then you can have an inside or outside back corner, and that's a separate process. You know, you can either be there and then angled, whatever you like to do. You can have a very obtuse angle or this sort of 45 degree for your for your thread to go in, and so on. So I think the back cornering is not just 1 cut, it's 2 cuts. What else have I to say about this? Oh, paring the leather. This leather is rather thin. It's a sort of commercial thickness. I'm used to rather chunky skins, but this is going to help me make my life so much easier on a demonstration. I don't want to have to fight the leather. This is going to fall on. And Don showed yesterday that, you know, the graining up and the paring. This hasn't been paired, just at the head and tail turn-ins. You know, just feeling your way. As Don says, you need to. I'm going to have it slightly. That wouldn't be out of character at all with my work. Slightly. It's not absolutely perfectly done, so that's fine. And I don't think it matters which is the front. This is rather scarred, and I've probably picked the wrong colour for this, as Don was pointing out yesterday. You notice the profile of this, the way I've cut this, is that we've got a lot of turn-in. Not a great deal. I mean, it's not excessive. I can lose that. But I need to concentrate on the spine area, and I've just allowed normal expansion, because I don't intending to mould the leather across the spine, move the decoration across the spine. This is going to be a very traditional book. I'm doing a spiral here, and a spiral on the other side, you know. So I just don't have to think about images appearing before my eyes, and they do quite often. You know, I just have to twist my hands round, and it's done. This is basically, Don showed how to go covering. This is going to be a phased or stage covering. And this is generally useful anyway, particularly if it's a large, ungainly text. You get your front board down, and you can consider everything, the front board, and then you consider the spine, and you deal with that, and then you consider the back cover, and you deal with that. And then the turn-ins are pasted. So I use a little brush. Well, I have to start off really, as I say, this is not paired. This helps me as well, because I don't have to worry too much about positioning the turn-ins, you know, because everything's even. I only have to locate the position of the spine. And this is the spine of the animal, and that's the spine of the book as well. I'll just paste the slips. This is capped, and it has the mylar inside, like Don indicated yesterday. I've got my cards, which, with the spacing, giving a little spacing for a free movement in the joint, giving some space for the linen jointed end paper, which is made, and it has a linen joint sewn on, and there's also a loose guard. It's sort of cockerel practice. So I'll just put a little paste on these slips, and I have to start moving. Nice new apron, I can't use that. Not too much paste in the slips. These are double 6 chords. It's quite heavy. Did I have a hole? Yeah. Oops. This is, the forwarding is essentially, 16th century, I guess. This doesn't, it's not terribly important because these slips are so heavy, it's not going to penetrate. It's just, it'll tack to the waste sheet slightly and may inhibit movement. I haven't locked it up, there is always danger of you getting the book out of square, And that's a crime. I think these cards are square. I didn't bring a set square because it's all weight, isn't it? Does that look square? I'll go for that. If you don't have them really nice and square, they fall over. Am I happy with that? I guess I am. Okay. So I'll damp the cover down, or the part I'm going to start with, which is the nicest side. It's funny like this, isn't it? Oh, potluck. Drinking water. I'll just, oh dear. It's all. I just want a slight little humidity in this. I don't like this at all, really. Spread the stain around a bit. I don't want it too wet. This is a rather light coloured leather. I'm likely to bruise it. But as I'm going to bandage it at the end, you won't see that. There we are. I'm sure I should be thinking about something else. This is wheat starch, wheat flour paste. And I'll just paste an area I think should be the turn-in. I don't know if I'm going to get there, but to start with. I can do with quite a lot, actually, of this. And you see it's sort of curved around slightly, so I can draw the meat end into the center of the board. Is everybody seeing this all right? Is it? Nice lumpy paste. I think that's roughly the spine. It's just I could paste the thing out and let things dry off a little. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be too precise about this, because I don't know how things are going to go. You can put it on like toffee because it's not a smooth covering, so it's not going to show if there are any lumps. Yes, you can pre-form on a sheet of glass if you're really concerned to produce something that you have to work on over a long time. You might start pre-forming this on a piece of plexiglass or sheet glass or thin mylar. And then when you're happy with the forming, then transfer it to the text, to the binding, the board. All sorts of ways of dealing with it. I need to size the board, as Don showed yesterday. I think I prefer this flour because flour paste because it's not so tacky. And it gives a bit more working time, I hope. Hairs. And hairs don't matter much either because you won't see them. That's fine. I think the staining problem comes from a paste. I always found that, if paste was slightly watery, this is nice and viscous and not too wet. If you get the flour water sort of passing through the skin, that's when you get these horrible. And if the skin's over-paired, and the danger spots are the head and tail of the, where you're likely to get staining, is where you've probably over-paired slightly for your cap setting. Your head and tail band. Okay. Now plonk this in the middle somewhere. And you can see that I've got more paste, or more leather than I'm going to need, really. Then we start moving it in. Don't worry too much about what it looks like at this point. If you see anything, tell me, I'll stop. I can do several swirls at a time. That's what's easy about it, see, because it starts to order the pleats. You've got to get the air out. And you don't want it too pleaty at the turn, and it makes life difficult for that aspect of the work. So, at the same time, consider that the spine, you allow a little bit of leather for your bands, of course. You see, it slides around for quite a time, and then everything seizes up, and you've got to have some sort of something happening by that point. And if it doesn't, you can just rip the cover off and go. Nothing much happening there. Let's see. Yeah, I'm watching these turn-ins. I don't want too much trouble there. That's why I have on occasions used, the three-part construction, so you can do all your modelling on the board, worked off the book. I don't know. How's your world? Something like that. I'll just see how I'm getting on with the spine alignment. I don't want too much turning at the head and tail. Yeah, that looks reasonable. Okay. It does occasionally appear. This is not, but it never is. Let's move that up there a bit. That's quite good. A little bit of sea wave, a la Philip. It's all derivatives, isn't it? Something's emerging. That's quite a nice little movement there. We can carry that on up there. Does that say anything to you? This is audience participation. You've got to give it a thumbs down. I don't like that. You ask for spaghetti, you get spaghetti.
How long does it stay wet enough for you to go mouldy?
For me to go mouldy? Is that a Dutch accent?
When you have to stop because it dries?
You can see by the colour, this isn't just bruising, it is also moist. So it's quite humid, and that's drinking water. You want to work as long as you can, because sometimes this image doesn't appear, something doesn't happen for a long time, and you start panicking. And then you just make compromises. I think that's all right. It'll have to do. I haven't brought a moisture meter with me.
Just time. Does it take 10 minutes to dry, a quarter of an hour?
This?
Yeah.
Oh, this will be dry tomorrow.
You can't go on chain.
No, it seizes up on you.
Yeah, how long does it take?
Not a clue. sorry, no disrespect. I'm worried about this. I've got to do a mitre now, do you realise? I've not only got to be creative, I've got to be technical as well. So I'm going to, with the covering, you can see it's not sticking yet. So, and I'm like Don yesterday, I just put a scribe, imagine my tea. And then you can heel out at the same moment, you know, that corner. Sometimes. I've got to check this, but I'll get it thin. And then if you've bruised your skin, it's still damp enough to, and just check if you've drawn your mitre lines. You can do a quick check. Oh, I'm quite happy with that. Non Chimali. Okay. This is how I would deal with it. I do this generally. I don't tend to get inside the book. I fold it back a little and decide which was the last position. Yeah, more or less. No, very little pressure. It's a slice, so you're not pressing hard, you know. You're just slicing off a bit of leather. You can fiddle with it afterwards. It gets most of the material off your back. And if you want, you can grain up, you know, if you've crushed it a little. And then just check your position. You can slide it in and get. That'll be all right, I should think. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. You know your mitres are going to go in nicely. Okay. Right. And I'm still adding little bits, you know. A little counter movement here. That's nice. Yeah. And a face appears. Bloomsday. Now, these also provide spaces now for putting working tools or something, you know. So, but you can prepare this. You can actually start thinking about these things. Like Edgar Mansfield, his wasn't wing it like this. It was really well thought out. So I'll do the back. I'll give this a little bit of chance. There. Okay. We're all right so far, are we? How long have I got? Another 45 minutes? Oh. I'm pasting the spine and avoiding the turn-ins at this point, you know, just to leave it I'll paste that up later. That'll be all right. Say that again, Ruth? Pardon? Yeah. Well, as much as I've done here, you see. I wouldn't have, if I'd had to pair this, I wouldn't have had any problem locating the turn-in. It's just, if you suddenly decide to pull an area flat, I mean, if you want a vertical stress or, you know, a particular move, you've got freedom to do it without worrying. You can change your mind, in other words, if you've got the leather all the same thickness. I mean, the Great Book of Ireland was an enormously thick skin, but then it was an enormous book, you see. And I didn't have to worry about whether the turn-in was equal or if it was slightly skewed. This is very primitive, isn't it? But it does harden up. It forms the basis of the, you want plenty of paste. But, because it forms the support for the ruching or crinkling,
With those big books of yours, do you use only one leather
What?
skin for the covering? Or do you scar the joint? You know sometimes how skins are not big enough.
Oh, I see. I always get a skin that's big enough. I would have to scarf it in. I have done that. But very large books, of course, you'd scarf. But you could then do a three-piece structure, couldn't you? Like Philip Smith's early, type of Royal College of Art stuff, Not London School of Printing stuff. I want a fairly neat spine, sort of. God, I've got a lot of leather to get rid of there, haven't I? I don't set the joints because I don't want to see a little crease appear along the joint. I like this to look like an open board, sort of covering. And get my turn in. That's all right, I think. Just band up for the moment. Oops. Or if you don't want to do that, you can just leave it. I'd probably best leave that. Looking a little stressed at the moment. That'll do. I can come back to that. I won't do the drinking water joke again. Right. Now, I've got what have I got? I got that going that way. And that's going to go that way. That's too clever. No, generally I do it this way. It might sound... It may not want to go that way, you see. I don't know. I didn't do the sizing today. It's not moving. That would be, do the spine and then, no, because you need this to be able to move and change, as you know. And if you lock the spine up and then come back to it, it's what did I say? Forgotten. You get it all piled in there. It's moving up.
I don't know why I took on this sort of work. I'm moving off ruche leather. I'm onto tools now. I think I'll... get the air out. I used to like the struggle, but I don't like it anymore. Speak to me. You can try some folder work, to emphasize. If you want to put, for example, get this well emphasized, you can start moving, using a folder, countering, doing a counter movement like that, all sorts of ways of playing with this. See a nice little movement emerging. It's amazing stuffed vegetable tan leather, isn't it? Yeah. Shift the center of gravity somewhere else. I'm not talking to it. That'll have to do. My brain hurts. Just have a sneak at the squares. Things can move in mysterious ways. And it's still quite plastic. You can work quite a long time. Didn't do that very well.
Find that you become more attached to the back cover than the front. Is it possible to return to the front and alter it at this point?
I think you can do minor adjustments, yeah. I think the safest way is not to attempt to do the back, but I'm giving you two for the price of one. You know, I think, you know, this would be, ideally this is a textbook, so you want a bit of decoration on the front and have the back rather smooth, you know, so it doesn't abrade so much. But I had planned to do that, you know, make it a fairly plain back, just do the decoration on the front, but I forgot. Yeah, that should be all right. Okay. Right. I'll come back to that in a minute. The back is better than the front. It's always the way with me. Then you set in normal practice, you set your miters, and then you worry about how to get rid of the bit in the middle. Exactly. I'll come back to that. Gets it out of the way. Whoops. Okay so far? I'm asking my wife, not you. I want a fairly even turning. This is quite wide. It's wider than if you were doing the blurs, but I didn't need as much as that, but just to be on the safe side. Oops. Leave a bit of crinkly on the inside just to follow the idea through. Just check for any pencil pockets. You can leave these bands just as bumps, or you can nip them up or tie them up. I'll give these a quick nip. Well, if you really want to, oh well. There's a famous fisherman, George something Mackenzie, a Newfoundlander, and he fished the southern English chalk streams and sort of invented a type of nymph fishing, upstream wet fly fishing. Anyway, he had an American rod, a Leonard, and he called it the world's best rod, WBR. Well, these are the WBBN, the world's best band nippers. I nicked them from my firm where I was apprenticed. Yeah.
Tony, as you handle the book now at this stage, is that leather sliding at all?
No. It's locked now. How long's that? I can't do anything about the front cover, but I can still manipulate the back. Yeah. If I think the pleat's too fat, I can spread it out a bit, just to give it a lower profile. It stays plastic for quite a long time, but this is beginning to give up the ghost, resigned itself to being where it is. Catches the light rather well. I certainly only need very good lighting to make this look any good. Okay. Drinking water. Isn't that unhygienic? Okay. See, now you haven't got all this. It's stuck there, so it should have held out all right. I need some more paste. Good drop of stuff. This is Bernard Middleton's recipe. Just perfect for this job. Little brush. LC start. That's nice and easy. See, what I've been covering, I don't know how long this takes, but it is. If you can think of a proper way to exploit it as a technique, like Philip, then it's fine. But as Pamela pointed out, it's sort of a dead end. You can't go on crinkling leather all your life. Move on. So, this is to move the stain around. Because this is a tight back book, I've got to paste both sides of the turn-in. And make sure it's not too stuck up in the joint. Put a lick on the hair side or grain side. This is where your lack of dexterity shows. Stay. Feeling your miters. And you see, with the forage, as Don pointed out, with the forage turned in, it has a chance to harden up. So by the time you come to do the head and tail turn in, you can push this against the shoulder without the thing shifting, you know. So that's one of the reasons, the main reasons I always turn in the forage is so I can push the mitre, feel the mitre in. And I avoid folder work whenever that's moved out, but it's still malleable. Quite good. That feels level enough. Does that look clear enough? So you want to get the folder in there. It's a rounded core, so, you know, it's a sort of rounded cap as a consequence. Open up sesame. Get that. This is the important area, to get that leather up against the back corner. I haven't done a very good job of nicking out, so I'll come back to that. It looks a bit gross, actually. If you need to smooth down a fold of paper, if the grain's a bit lifeless, you can Try and revive it. Very chunky. I've done that, haven't I? Yes. Spread it around. That's why you need a wideish turning, you see, so you can manipulate the leather a little and get it, at least the area that matters, fairly flat. You know, when you've got pleats like that to deal with, you need the depth. I've seen so many well-manicured hands recently. Amazing. Stay here, bugger. Yeah, it's not well done. But there we are. I'm not that bad. Oh, I've got that one to do. You can use your thumbs or whatever. Right. Get that well down there for the hinging. If you concentrate on that, you don't have to worry about setting joints or anything. That's where the tension is. Move it down a bit. Craft Bookbinder. nip. This is a safer way of doing it, actually. Put your finger here all the time. Okay? You don't want to spoils the binding, covering. I've done it, I know. Spend the rest of the day with a toothpick and a nail brush. I'm doing this sort of West End, sharp. Well, not West End, East End. It's not my favourite band stick, but it was a light one. It's giving. You want that transition there without any crinkles or creases, We're nearly there, aren't we? I think. No. Little overworked, but there we are. I'll leave it to case harden a bit, as they say in engineering, and then I'll bandage it up to dry to keep it under some sort of constraint. If you like to sharpen up your end band, the head cap rather, we can give it a lick. It doesn't help it much. Tilt the book slightly. Don't rub it. Sort of. Yeah. There you go. I use, I don't use French silk velvet now, but I use polyfoam, ether foam, is it? Plastozoate. What the hell is it? A polyethylene foam that we're using for our phase boxes for conservation. And you could cover that with something soft. Well, if you're happy with that area and you can control the paste and position everything. The trouble with this is that I don't know where these boards are going. I mean, they might pull out, they might do all sorts of funny things. Somehow the tension is different on this type of covering, you know, the stresses. So sometimes it doesn't pull at all. So it might be, if you're using very thin boards, if you want to use very thin boards, it might be a good idea. Otherwise, they'll be pulling all over the place. These are hard, rigid boards, you know, like millboard. So you might pre-form for a very slim, if you were doing a very slim piece of work, you know, a slim binding. But yeah, you would dry it out. You'd let all the tensions ease out, and then you could probably just do things at the back, you know, sand it and do. And then glue the board and position it. Glue the board with PVA, for example, and position the work. You know. Now this is all vertical stress, except I put handmade paper. The Kalamazoo is Tim Barrett's paper is immensely powerful. And if I want a cushioning that way and that way, the handmade helps achieve that effect. But I wouldn't cross-ply the mill boards, because you have a tendency, I think, to get what they call a wind sometimes, you know. I don't know. See if I...
Even if you have it balanced on the sides of the core of the board, that is a vertical,
Yeah, I have suggested that in the past, but I was lying. I keep all the grain. The grain runs this way, by and large. Who's a cheeky paddy? Is that a fact? Well, well, there you are. Yeah, you can start out. You see, I did Bloomsday, and I had the idea of James Joyce and so on. So I was looking at a photograph of James Joyce, rather like Phillips, nothing like Phillips, but I mean, a face is amazing. It's like these Japanese paper, you know, the modern work with paper sculpture and so on. To be looking at another face other than your own, quite amazing. It's staring at you out of the book, you know. I've got a finger mark there. Just check for nail dents. And have I named it? It's called screwing leather. You like that one, do you? Now it's feeling very tired, so I'm going to bandage it up and put it away. Any more? Is somebody doing a demonstration after this? Can this be left here?
yes.
Yeah, I'll leave it to surface dry and then I'll bandage it up before it decides to go this way or that way, or the other way. With bandage. It's a flexible bandage. Pardon? No, it's so light. I want this to case harden so that when the bandage goes on, I don't have to bandage it. It's just to make sure that it behaves itself. Okay? So, what we'll do is just do a light bandaging, Nothing too heavy, so that you don't want to impress the leather with the texture of the textile. So I'm not putting any pressure on this. It's just to hold it, and it does draw out the moisture as well. It allows you to stand it up, and it'll dry off much quicker and under control. So don't be frightened. If you put paper or whatever, blotting paper underneath, it corrugates and does all sorts of terrible things. So you just want you should only if you just have the bandage. Yeah. That's the secret binding there. Mummified.
Thank you, Tony.